Hey guys, welcome back to Madera Farms. If you are new, I am so glad that you clicked on this video. Today we're actually going to be diving into how I got started as a micro baker. This term micro baker or microbakery is kind of new, at least for me. I didn't hear about it for a very long time. In fact, I was baking sourdough for about 3-ish years before I actually made it a thing, an official business where people could order specific bread from me or scones like I'm packaging up here. So I figured today would be a great way for me to tell my story and how I got started. I touch on it a lot throughout my videos, but I don't think I've ever really told the entire story. So jump back about COVID time when everyone decided that they were going to start making sourdough. I jumped on the sourdough train and it was not easy. I failed miserably, a lot. I was trying to make the bread and it would come out looking like frisbees and I was not good at it. I remember this very vividly taking loaves to my in-laws for a dinner we were having, and I was so proud of these loaves and they were horrendous. Looking back, I'm like, I can't believe anybody even ate that because it looked like a hockey puck. But that's where I got my start. And then from there, I kind of dabbled a little bit here and there with different recipes until I really found what worked for me. That was really when I found this recipe. I can't remember where I found it. I think it was on Pinterest, but it called for cups instead of using a scale. And for me, that just seemed easier. It wasn't anything where I was having to have a kitchen scale and it wasn't overwhelming to me. It just made more sense because that's what I was used to. So once I decided to transition from using a kitchen scale to using cups, I really found that that worked better for me. My starter was doing great. Everything was just going smoothly. And then once I started sharing a little bit more here and there on Instagram about baking bread and all the things I was making with my starter, more and more people were asking if I could make them bread, and it just kind of snowballed from there. It wasn't really intentional to start a business. I do clearly remember there's a video out there, and I actually just watched it the other day, where I'm teaching my dear friend Megan on how to make sourdough. And we had so much fun. We were laughing hysterically. It was a complete disaster. But in that moment of teaching her, it sparked something. And I knew that I wanted to not only share sourdough bread with my community, but I also wanted to teach others how to bake this bread for their families. Because I think it's important that we have skills that not only serve us, but that we can then give to others. So that shift happened, I can't remember the date on that video, but it wasn't even a year ago. And so clearly I remember after having that day with her and laughing and coming home and making a beautiful loaf of bread, that we created this core memory that her and I still laugh about until this day. It's just so funny. And that happened over bread. And if that little moment in time can happen with just teaching someone sourdough, what can it do when you are doing it on a bigger scale? So that's when I started launching my in-person sourdough workshops. And these sourdough workshops were a gateway into many other things that would take place. So I started with 6 people, and I would do these workshops, and they would come into my kitchen and I would teach them everything I knew about sourdough. In the process, they would learn how to feed a starter, they would get a starter, they would actually score and bake bread, and the response on those was amazing. Like, people absolutely loved learning. They loved the connection that they made, and truly that is what I love about baking sourdough, is you're creating this connection with people through baking bread. And I still continue those till this day. I had to take a month off of doing that. Look how beautiful this is. Of doing that because things just got so crazy with special orders that I honestly couldn't manage all of it. So I'm going to have another workshop next week, and I'm just so excited to get back into the groove of that because that's like where I truly like thrive. And just to give you a little background, I worked for a corporate company, was an education designer. So basically what I did is I designed all of their trainings and all that stuff. So I do have a lot of experience in that. I'm not saying that I am by any means the best at it, but I do have experience at it. So that helps me to understand how to go about creating these workshops. So I am like kind of jumping all over the place, but mainly what happened is I started doing these workshops. Word started to spread. I landed my first wholesale customer. The reason I got my first wholesale customer was because I created a thing called a bread club. And my idea behind the bread club was that I would have this core group of people and they would kind of be my taste testers. They paid a membership, and in this membership, they would get 1 free loaf a month. They could also upgrade. I talk about this in another video, but really that kind of catapulted everything. Those people would tell another person, or they would gift one of their loaves to someone else. And this just became something that would snowball. And so from that bread club, I got my first wholesale customer, which was such a blessing. They buy all of our eggs and they buy 36 loaves of bread a week. And we have created such a tight connection that I just love our working relationship so much. And I really value that relationship. That relationship has really helped me grow so much. So this bread club was bringing in new customers. I was able to share that I had special orders going out. So it created a little bit of momentum. From there, I took that momentum and I started to apply it to different areas. So I was still doing these workshops. People were loving the workshops. I was sharing a lot on social media. And then as people were buying more and more bread, I was sharing that process of, okay, now I have 12 loaves a week. Now I have 15 loaves a week. And it slowly started to create so much momentum that I honestly didn't have to share a whole heck of a lot to be able to get a ton of orders. And I think that's where a lot of people find it difficult, is they think they can't start their microbakery until they're doing 30, 40, 50 orders a week, because that's what they see online. You can start your microbakery by doing 3 loaves a week, 4 loaves a week. It doesn't have to be a big scale to get started. And mine wasn't. I did the bread club so that I knew I would be able to make at least 6 loaves a week, and that would help me to get more consistent with baking. And I think that's what you need to do. My story kind of just flows right through that. As you can imagine, things kept snowballing. People kept reaching out, wanting more and more bread. The one thing that I do want to tell you guys, and it doesn't happen by chance. I worked really, really hard to get to the place that I'm at. And there was a lot of sacrifices, a lot of all-nighters for me to get to a place where I feel comfortable baking 90, 180 loaves a week sometimes. And you don't just get there overnight. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication. And some days are much harder than other days. But the one thing that I always go back to is, why am I doing this? To create connection, to create community, to provide for my family, to have bread for people to eat and not feel guilty about, because the food system is broken. And there's just one little piece that I can do is to change out the bread that's in someone's house. Then that's why I'm doing this. So I think my story ultimately comes around to, you can't just start baking bread, and it's not going to happen overnight. Start really small. Start selling 4 loaves a week and build on that. Build your confidence, build your brand, build your reputation, and I promise you the sales will start to come. If you're looking at doing wholesale, I have a whole video on how to get wholesale customers and the process that I used. That is a different beast in itself. And my story with my wholesale was a lot more me going to them and literally just telling them, bringing up samples, having meetings with these wholesale customers. And they're a lot harder to work with. My one that I dearly love, my very first wholesale customer, is just so easy, and that's not the case. Sometimes you're going to have customers who want to place different orders every week, or they're going to do something different with your bread. They want to use it for sandwiches, so you need to bake it in different loaves. And you need to set boundaries so it doesn't get too crazy. Trust me, I'm literally right in the middle of this right now. So just learn from my mistake is set boundaries, know what you're good at, and stay with that. Don't try and do 1,000 different things, because that's what I'm doing, and I'm like having to pull myself back. But I wanted to share my story with you guys because I want you to understand that it doesn't go from baking one loaf at your house for your family to baking 180 loaves in a week. It's going to take time. You're going to have to build customer base. All the things that you hear about in business is what you're going to have to do. The one good thing about sourdough is that once you have that skill, you have that skill. You can hone it into different areas, but you can start making scones. You can diversify your menu a little bit more. But the one thing is you're gonna have the skills so that you can just take that and run with it. If you wanna start doing inclusions, if you wanna start doing muffins or different things, you can do that. Again, I would recommend doing it slowly, building up your product slowly so that you're not taking on too much at once. But it's so doable, and it only takes a couple months before you feel comfortable enough to start putting yourself out there more and more and more. When you go to wholesale customers, I went to them and I made a really big mistake. I'm going to share that with you guys because I think it's really important. The big mistake that I made is positioning myself as a new vendor. When I went to my first meeting, it's a local grocery store. I went into this meeting, I brought literally every kind of bread that I ever made. So I brought in samples. They were eating the bread while we were talking, and I said out loud to them, this is a new venture for me. I've never been in a grocery store. So what do you guys think will work? And as soon as I said that, I knew that that was not good, because what happens is it puts the ball in their court. They start demanding of you as if you were one of their employees. And that has backfired so many times in our working relationship, because I have to then step forward and say, this is how I do my business and this is what needs to be done. And if you can't follow this, then we cannot have a working relationship, because I don't run on your schedule, right? And it's really hard to backtrack once you've positioned yourself that way. I will never do that again, and don't ever do that, because it will be such a headache. I promise you. So I am just putting this all out there because this is my experience, this is my story, and I want you guys to learn from it. I don't want you to make the mistakes I made, and I want you to take the lessons I've learned and use them to grow faster, quicker, and honestly have a great business. Last 2 weeks for me have been extremely hard. I have been crying a lot. I feel very overwhelmed, throwing in the towel. All the things have come out of my mouth. The one thing though, again, I go back to why am I doing this? And I've had to actually scale back quite a bit. 2 weeks ago, I did 180 loaves in a week, cooking 4 at a time in my oven. I was literally staying up all night baking. It was a disaster. I was asking anybody to come help me because I was just so overwhelmed. And since then, I've definitely prioritized a lot more. And I think that's all part of learning how to run a business. You kind of have to get to that spot where you realize, okay, this is way too much. Let me bring it back, and then I can balance out what is comfortable for me. You don't know until you get there. So I just wanted to give you guys my story. I wanted to explain a little bit more of how I got to where I am, and I hope this is helpful for you guys. I hope that you take a lot away from this. I do use an ordering system where my customers order online. It's called Bakesy, and it's not the best. Hot Plate would probably be better, but my customers right now are so used to paying through Bakesy that I'm just gonna leave it there. I'll leave a link in the description, so if you want to start your microbakery and you want to use that, go ahead and do it. But definitely check out Hot Plate too. If I had to start over, I would probably switch to Hot Plate, but right now I have business cards that have all of the QR codes for that on it, so I can't really make the switch yet. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know it was a lot of me just chatting at you, but I thought it was valuable in learning my story, learning how I got to where I am. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I would also like to know where you are in your journey. Are you starting a microbakery? Are you thinking about starting a microbakery? I have a really exciting offer that's coming out, hopefully in the next video. I am launching a guide on how to start a microbakery. And if this is something that sounds intriguing to you, I hope you'll keep watching and subscribing to my channel so that you can get a chance to jump in on that guide and get your microbakery started. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, friends.